finally figured out why some AI videos feel like movies and most of them don't. Because for the longest time, I was doing what I think that most people are doing right now. I'd write prompts describing what I wanted to see, like a surfer, a beach, a sunset, a character walking through the city, whatever it was. And sometimes I'd get a really cool shot, sometimes I'd get a really cool image, and sometimes I'd even get a really cool video. But it still didn't always feel cinematic. It still felt like AI a lot of times. Then I accidentally stumbled onto something while testing a marketing tool, and it completely changed how I think about prompting. Now, these tools are evolving ridiculously fast right now. So every week there's a new model, a new workflow, a new feature, and honestly, it's getting harder and harder to figure out what actually matters. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the sequence that you just watched. I'm gonna talk about the workflow that I used to build it, the prompt framework that changed everything for me, what worked, what didn't work, and most importantly, why I think this applies to pretty much every AI video model that we're using right now. Because once this clicked for me, the quality of my generations completely started improving. So let's go ahead and jump in. All right, how's it going? So for the last few videos, I've been diving into some new tools and working with some platforms on some collaborations and things like that. But for this one, I wanted to step back, take you behind the scenes again, and really just walk you through some of the things that I've been working on and how I got to certain places. So this video is really about the process behind this whole montage sequence, because this didn't start off as a clean tutorial. That wasn't the idea for this. It started off as one of those weird sort of AI rabbit holes where you're testing one thing and you're chasing another thing, and then somewhere in the middle of all that you find something that actually changes how you work a little bit, or some little gold nugget that you're going to use for a long time moving forward. And for me, it all started with this clip right here. Let's go ahead and play it real quick. So that's where everything started. So that clip right there was honestly one of the best one prompt generations that I've gotten so far, for like the whole exact vibe and feeling that I was really trying to create. It's not perfect, but for one prompt, one character reference, just one location reference, that's all I use for this. That's the closest that I've gotten to just a real cinematic montage that captures emotion, feeling, sound design, all those things within 15 seconds. So I was really excited when that actually came out, but let's talk about how I got there. So this whole thing came from a really strange place. So this whole thing, it came from the Higgsfield marketing studio. It was a weird thing. Now, Higgsfield had reached out about doing a collaboration around the whole marketing studio thing. And I was really trying to figure out where to fit that into my workflow. Because if you watch this channel for any amount of time, you'd know that I'm really not focused on the whole UGC content sort of thing. More about trying to figure out how things work in a video and filmmaking process. I'm really focused on storytelling and different things like that. So when I first looked through the whole marketing studio thing, honestly, most of the presets didn't really seem like they applied to what I was doing. Some look pretty cool, don't get me wrong. Yeah, that'd be great if that's what I was into, but that's not what I was. But then I started looking at a couple of them, like hypermotion, and then specifically the whole TV spot thing. And that whole thing got me thinking, right? See, the reason that it caught my attention is actually pretty simple when you think about it. See, everything inside of Marketing Studio maxes out at 15 seconds because it's using Seedance under the hood, and the maximum for Seedance is 15 seconds. But I started thinking about that, and what they're essentially trying to do with a TV spot that has a max of 15 seconds is they're trying to answer the question, how do you tell a story in 15 seconds? Because that's exactly what a 15-second commercial you're trying to do. And that really made me start to think about stuff. So you're creating an emotion, you're establishing a character, you're establishing a location, you're creating a mood, you're telling a story, all within that tiny amount of time. And that's when I really started thinking maybe this isn't just a marketing framework, maybe it's more of a storytelling framework. So I dove into that and I started running some tests, and I took the TV spot examples. So the TV spot right here, if you click recreate, it'll show you the prompt that goes into it. So what I did was I took that prompt, copied it over, dropped it into ChatGPT, and started really trying to tear it apart. And what I did was I fed ChatGPT my scene information, my character, my location, my references, and all this was based on a real location, by the way. Like I pulled an image of this location from my Instagram account, and this is Playa Cocles in Puerto Viejo, Costa Rica, in that whole area. So I pulled that image, and then the other thing that I did was I used my character reference sheet, and that was it. And that's what I try to do with a lot of these things is like a based on a true story thing. So I'll pick actual elements that were there, and then I'll try to build the story from there with added elements with AI. So that's the whole sort of concept behind it. So I started testing, and honestly, the first generations, they didn't really work. I was using the TV spot preset, dropped it in, and this is the stuff that I got. Now the prompt was solid. Like the way that it broke it down, the way that it used that TV spot template as a reference, it did a really good job. But this is looking more like a cologne ad or something like that, and that's not what I was going for. So I tried it again, got another cool output, but not what I was going for. I mean, the characters stayed relatively consistent, the location stayed very consistent, but the story wasn't right. It wasn't the feeling that I was going for. So what I did from there is, instead of continuing to fight the preset, I pulled the prompt structure out completely, and I took the framework, and actually I took the exact same prompt from this, and I dropped it into Seedance. So for this one, I went to the video and just chose the Seedance 2.0 model right here and dropped that exact same prompt in, and this is what I got. And it was exactly what I was looking for. And that's that clip that I showed you, the very best one-shot, 15-second prompt generation. Honestly, this was one of those moments where I just sat there staring at the screen. I played it a few times because this felt a lot different from a lot of the generations that I've gotten. I've really learned how to tell a story really well, and I've really learned how to build out scenes and have continuity and different things like that. But to get all of these elements within 15 seconds with the look and the feel that I was going for, this is really special. Not perfect, but something that made me think that I was on to something that I'll probably be using a lot more in the future. And that's where this whole thing just kind of sent me down a rabbit hole. So at this point, I wanted to know, can I use the same structure for an actual montage sequence, like a full sequence? Can I compress a lot of story into a short amount of time? See, with a lot of parts of a film project or something like that, you want these moments to breathe, but at the same time, there's other parts of the story where you want to capture emotion, capture feeling, capture everything within a short amount of time. And that's what I wanted to really explore right here. So that whole thing is what I started testing next. But before we get into that montage, let's break down the prompt itself, because understanding why this worked is probably more valuable than the actual prompt. So the first element of this prompt is the visual language. And none of this is really random. This is all based on the information that I have in my film Bible. And I go over all this kind of stuff in my courses in my Skool community. So if you want to check that out, the links will be in the description. But I talk about building out your film Bible, casting, all those kind of things. And that's why all of this visual language was already in there. That's what I wanted to use for this film. So what I had and did was I took that information from my film Bible, or I had ChatGPT do it, and add that all into the prompt right here. So you see these different things, the ARRI Alexa, you have the lenses, you have the grain and film style and different things like that that are all baked into there. Camera, the lenses, the color science, the memory grade, the film grain, all those kind of things. And all of this is really just to define the world first, because if you don't, the model will fill in the gaps. So the next section was the character. And even though for the main character, I already had a character element built inside of Higgsfield, I went ahead and put the pose sheet in to reinforce the look and what he's wearing there, just to make sure instead of just describing it, I've got the pose sheet in there also. So we've got all of these reinforcements that tell the model exactly what's going on. Is it all needed? I don't know, but it's in there. The next section is the location, where there's the description of it, the location and all those things with the reference image that I talked about earlier. And then after all that, we start getting into the actual prompt, the actual time segments of this prompt. And that whole thing gets pretty intense. And I think that's where a lot of this works. So for example, for this first one is the first 2 seconds of this scene, but then it goes into all these details. Extreme macro, water droplets sliding down the wax surfboard rail, sunset reflections, shimmers across wet fiberglass, camera glides inches above the board at 100mm macro, shallow depth of field, isolates droplets and salt crystals. And then also the sound design for just those first couple of seconds. And then one of the things that was really interesting was doing this whole 2-second segment right here. But within that segment, it says ultra fast insert sequence, hand gripping the surfboard rail, feet stepping into shallow water, and does this whole quick montage that happens within those 2 seconds. Does it hit every single beat every time on these prompts? No, it doesn't. But it captured a lot of it, which is really interesting how this whole thing works. Now, the one thing that I did not reinforce with this whole prompt was the actual surfboard. It just said surfboard, right? So when I dove into doing the next full sequence that I wanted to test out, I wanted to actually use a real surfboard. So like I said, when I'm doing things that are based on a true story, I like to bring in actual true elements from that. So what I did was I brought that into ChatGPT and then ended up making this product photo of the actual surfboard. Now, some parts of that were a good idea, some parts of it were a bad idea. And I'll tell you really quick what worked and what didn't with this. So let's go ahead and look at some of this whole scene that I put together, and we'll talk about the different elements of it and how they came about and what worked and what didn't work with it. All right, so this actually isn't even finished. I want to do something on this final frame here, all kinds of stuff. But let's talk about really quick what worked, what didn't work, how we got there. All right, so what I ended up doing was for the first frame of this, I did a very similar thing to what we did before. I took the prompt template that we had come up with from this whole process, dropped it into ChatGPT, and had it pull out what I was trying to get from the first frame for the first part of this whole story, montage. So for this, same thing, dropped in the location, dropped in the character post sheet, that's it, and then the surfboard. And then I explained the sequence. Well, there was a mistake that I made here, and it's a very easy one to make. So I had the whole template that is built out and everything, and that's great. But when I got into the surfboard, there's one word here, yellow. And that changed how this whole generation came out, because the actual surfboard has two different colors, but this specified that the surfboard was yellow. So therefore, if you're looking at this clip, you can see right here, the whole surfboard is yellow. And parts of this weren't usable anyways. Like for example, if you're looking at right here, for one, there's one fin there. It's supposed to be 4 fins on the surfboard. For the reference here, it's a quad fin, 4 fins. There's not 4 there. Also, you look right here, cool, quad fin, everything worked out there. That doesn't really make much sense. But right here, it's like the bike is actually kind of riding the surfboard, which it doesn't really work out. And the top of the surfboard is yellow because we specify that the whole surfboard is yellow. Right here, if you look closely, the surfboard top is yellow, but that's not actually the product. That's not the surfboard that it's supposed to look like. Top this color, bottom that color. All right, cool. But I like the way that it came out. So then we went into the next shot. Next shot, very similar shot, or very similar prompt setup, just went into the next part of the story. All the stuff is the same, breaks it down, except for this one. What I ended up doing was on the very first shot, he's riding the bike in, right? But in order to keep the continuity between this one and the next one, I needed that bike to stay the same. So what I did was I took a screenshot of the bike from one of these shots here, took that over into ChatGPT, did the exact same thing, and made a product shot of the bike. That's the surfboard, but I did the same thing of the bike, and I added that into this next prompt in order to keep the continuity of the bike in the next scene. And then the next thing I did on this one was with the surfboard, I took out the word yellow. So for this one, it's just the retro fish surfboard with the image attached. And then as you can see right here, it started to work out. Now there are some other things that didn't work out. And let's talk about some of those really quick. And these are those details that when you're doing it on a full film level, like this is just a kind of proof of concept, just going through the whole thing really quick, just to understand if this process is going to work. But there are a few things that happened here that didn't work out. For this, I did add in for the location. This is actually one of our buddies' bars down there. They're actually still down there, but he rides past that. Everything's cool right there. But if you look at the surfboard here, for one, the fins are on the top. That's not the way it's supposed to look. It's supposed to be quad fins on the bottom. There's only 2 fins here also. So that didn't work out. And what I ended up doing with the final version, let's see if we can pull that up really quick. So with the final version, what I ended up doing for that part of the scene was I cropped it in. So we're not seeing the fins at all. We get the important parts, no fins, kind of works, right? And that's just that creative thinking, trying to get through this whole process. Now, a couple other things that didn't necessarily work out the way that it's supposed to. Cool. But then the same thing here. I left it just because this is not this is not going to stay in the film, but there's only 2 fins here also. So these minor details, and these are the things that really burn you up when you're doing these things, because you have to do another generation just to make sure that that stays consistent, and that takes time, cost credits, all those kind of things. So that's kind of annoying when it doesn't nail those things. Now, would it have been easier to go ahead and just do like an all white surfboard, just a normal surfboard, so that it's a lot easier? Yeah, it would have. And those are the things you kind of think about. Do you want those details in there, or do you want to have your generations work out a lot easier? Those are the things you have to think about. So then we went through, did some more generations, some more tests, and I can show you some of the things that work really quick and some of the things that didn't. As we're going through, he lands at the beach. Cool, he's walking. Or actually, let's back up. This is one thing here. It's kind of cool. I took this shot, bounced it over to that shot. Kind of works, right? But does it work? Because if you look at it closely, for one, half the surfboard is one color, half is the other. It's in his left arm, but then we switch to this angle and it's on his right arm. So technically that shot does not work, but I just left it in there because, like I said, this is just a proof of concept, just going through and seeing how this could work out and putting together a cool scene, not the final product. Then we added some shots in here. This stuff has to be fixed still, where the color grading is different than the rest of the scene. Everything's supposed to be golden hour, sort of sunset based on that initial image. But some of those things still have to be changed. So as you can see, when I'm going through this and when you're going through projects like this and scenes like this, a lot of this is problem solving. You're trying to get everything as perfect as possible, but it's not always going to be perfect. And you have to figure out ways around that. And that's one big part of this whole process. So for this, I'm not going to go through every single shot here because we'd be here forever, but I am planning on doing the extended version of this within my Skool community as a mini course walkthrough where I go through each shot and go a little deeper into this whole thing. But I really just wanted you to get the concept here. And a lot of the elements worked and some of them didn't. And every generation gave me information to move forward. That's kind of the workflow that I go through with a lot of these things. I generate, analyze, fix, and just do that over and over for each project. But each one has a base that we use moving forward for the next projects and the next projects and the next projects, depending on which tools are out there and what's going on. And there's a lot of things that I'm not going to talk about here. I'm going to try to talk about a little later on, different things that I found out with the new Google Omni model and their agent in there. And I've been working with the InVideo agent and different things like that, that I'm not going to get into in this video, but I'll try to get into a lot more down the line. Now, as I was going through this, obviously this whole process, this whole style is not something that you want to do for a whole film. You don't want a whole film of fast cuts and all this crazy stuff like that. But for one sequence or a montage where you're trying to tell a story within a short amount of time, something like this could work out really well. But like I said, I'm not going to go super deep into the rest of this today, but I just wanted to show you this whole concept, what I came up with, what happened, what worked, what didn't work, all those things that went into the sequence that I generated this past week. So this whole process is really powerful because it lets you build really visceral sort of beats, like feeling, sound, motion, emotion, and all those things really fast. And that's why this changed kind of how I probably prompt videos and segments like this moving forward. Not because I found one magic prompt, but because I found a new way to think about prompting moving forward. So I'm going to keep testing this and using it maybe on scenes that need to breathe more and different things like that down the line. I'll let you know how that goes. Also, I want to talk to you about Google, Omni, Seedance, Kling, how these things are all working together in the ecosystem and in my background right now. So if you want to dive deeper into this whole process, I'm going to be breaking down the full workflow, the prompts, the scene structure, the mistakes in more detail within my Skool community courses, and all the things that I have built out. I'll also leave the initial prompt or a version of the prompt or whatever probably in my newsletter, down the description, also other places like that where you can find it and just tear it apart and use it for yourself. But if you found any value in this, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. That'd be great. Check out the courses in my Skool community. That definitely helps out to keep this project going, helping us all learn together, all those kind of things. So anyways, I'll catch you in the next one.